Scott, this is primarily at you, but the other drivers may contribute to it as well. Just with the added hybrid scenario this year, particularly here, are we going to see a different type of race play out in terms of deployment during the race when you're in traffic or not in traffic? Is that actually going to be a factor in the race, do you think?
I think it definitely adds some variables. I think even in qualifying, I think there's more, things that you can mess up. As far as determining the race outcome, it could really play a big part, especially if, you go too early, you're sitting out front, you could be a bit of a sitting duck. And especially if, everybody's kind of recharged and ready to go behind you. So, the sequence of the last, 2-3 laps could really alter how it plays. Also opens up the issues of, clipping or, maybe options where, the hybrid's not going to be working as it should as well. So we've seen that in other races. So I think, you've really got to try to understand, when to go and where to go and what's going to be the best play out. The other thing too is with cautions that we've seen close to the end of the race, kind of changes that as well. So I think the biggest thing that we've probably all learned so far is that you've got to be ready for change is probably the biggest thing. But I think it could ultimately change how the end of the race plays out.
And then say coming down the straight here, do you notice the difference if you're in traffic and you use some of that harvested energy? Is it a noticeable gain that you get from it?
Yeah, if it's working correctly, it's definitely a big gain. The issue is that everybody else has it too, right? And strategies typically kind of end up being the same, and especially in the scenario of race running, you're kind of recharging most of the time, whether you're going into 1 or 3, depending on the traffic and how that works as well. So you're using it quite a lot. But the way that the energy is almost maybe too much. I think if you could only really deploy once a lap, I think it could change it a little bit better. To whereas now I think everybody's kind of deploying out of 2 out of 4.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much.
Chip and Mike, you guys have talked before about when you noticed Alex and how special he was and that he could probably make something of his career as a race car driver. Now that he's had this start to the season, what is it that he's doing right? And why is he having this overwhelming success?
I think, obviously he's doing what he's supposed to do. The team's doing what they're supposed to do. And when it all comes together, I think Barry Wanzer said it the best. He said, it's hard to get everything right. It's hard. And when everything's right, you have some amount of success. And but look, I feel bad for some of these other teams, not because we're beating them, because they haven't had a chance. I mean, some of these guys are beating themselves, whether it's in the pits or they're having mechanical issues, and so we've been the benefit of that also, and but for the obviously for 4 of the first 5 races, the 10 car has done everything right, not put a wheel wrong, got in and out of the pits, got through the start, had the right tire strategy, whatever you want to say. I mean, but it's hard to get everything right, believe me. I mean, that's what we've been working at for 35 years, is to get everything right. And it's down to the people on the team. Their kids are having a bad day in school. I mean, I hear it all. And when you have everybody rowing this ship in the same direction, you're going to have some amount of success. And right now, that's what's happening. And but like Alex said, though, we treat everyone like it's our first win, and it could be our last. So we want to enjoy the ones we do, but that's what we work at every day.
I just want to clarify, you have employees who come to you and tell you about their kid's bad day at school?
Yes.
And what is the advice you give?
It's just part of it. You know what I mean? It's part of these people have, everybody has a family, and everybody has things they're dealing with outside of their job that could affect their job. And we try to minimize all that. Yeah.
We've got Bruce Martin here in the front row. Bruce, go ahead. Chip, back when you raced, qualifying rules were a lot different. You really had one attempt.
Mhm.
And you had to wait for the right time. You had to wait for the wind to die down, for the temperature to be right. You might be in line, but you could pull out of line.
Mhm.
Once you took that time, the only way you could remove it would be to remove the car and then go to a T car.
Mhm.
Was that more stressful than what we have now, where you have multiple attempts and you can actually tune on the car?
You know, I would like to see it go back to that, because the one thing that people forget back then too, well, you know, and we're talking about back then was in the 80s, you know, in the early 80s, beginning in the early 80s up until the 90s, it was like that. And you know, what people forget was, you know, these engines weren't as reliable then as they are now. You know, you had guys, you know, I can't tell you how many times I sat here in the pit lane and watched some guys smoke the whole straightaway. That was like, I don't want to say it was an everyday occurrence, but it was, you know, you'd see 6 or 8 of those a month, and you don't see any of that anymore. You know, and so that's what even made it more stressful was, you know, but these engines are reliable now, and when they're reliable, you can have rules like that make it more, you know, would tighten things up a bit, I think, and you know, yeah, and you believe me, practice would be a whole different thing. And you know, I think they should look at that.
Mike, want to chime in?
Uh, I, I mean, it almost goes back to how I answered Wolfgang's question in a way. For me, I live about, my life has always been about today. And the rules that we live under today, I think, are as fair as they were then. Although some people thought they were unfair. You know, I just remember coming here as a young guy. I hate to say this, but as a young guy, and having 70 or 80 cars lined up to qualify. That's why they raced the way they raced then. That's why they only had they could only go for one time, because you had 80 cars lined up. Think about that. Today, we're lucky if we have 30 cars lined up. So you have the liberty of being able to go again. So it's still about the show. The show is different today. I like it? I agree with Chip. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's like this do-over thing. Why do you get to do it over again? Why aren't you ready the first time? I think that answers the question for me.
Jared Haas with FrenchStretch.com. Come back soon for more great racing videos. And if you like us, make sure to hit that subscribe button.